So, yes, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I would today put in front of you Warhammer 40k. Is it purposefully balanced badly, or is it not? And should we blame Games Workshop designers for that? This is a question that I have often grappled with in my darkest nights, and I did so publicly in my most recent video covering the Leagues of Votann and how they have been banned in Germany and Canada. Well, this is a public service announcement. Squats are banned in Germany, yes, but it's not as exceptional as I have been led to believe. Reddit lured me astray, which is something that I repeat often. So the Leagues of Votann were preemptively banned by German tournament organizers because of a lack of an FAQ and essentially balance patch from Games Workshop for the Votann, rather than their banning being a result of the playtesting done by players online, which had been suggested to me. Though it must still be said that the playtesting done by players online is the only reason that the competitive scene is able to have an informed discussion about how overpowered the Votann are, rather than just speculating based on what's in a book. And that's only possible because of the leak of the Votann Codex. So I stand by my video. I'm still supporting the espionage, lads. And remember, boys, the old maxim of spies everywhere.
I'll have a look around.
Thanks, spy unit from Command & Conquer Red Alert. But the fact that the German tournament policy is to preemptively ban every Warhammer 40k army when they get a new codex is kind of wild, right? And I guess that it's pretty indicative that historically, Warhammer 40k balance is often very bad. Oh no, I just made the understatement of the century. Quickly, I have to say something extremely controversial to fix my tepid take alarm. How about, I don't know, Dark Eldar are the protagonist faction of Warhammer 40k. Oh, phew, that was close. I almost went to Influencer Prison, where that subway man lives. Wait, that's just regular prison. But yes, Warhammer 40k is not balanced. We all know this. And I was mocked mercilessly in my comments section recently for suggesting that after like 20 odd years in the hobby that I've only just begun to consider that Warhammer 40k's balance is purposefully very bad. And y'all were really mean about it too. WTF, guys? I read those comments. I thought we were all friends. And although, yes, I think I've been a little bit naive, I will say it's not unreasonable to chalk up a lot of the bad balance from Games Workshop on more innocent explanations than the idea that they're purposefully sabotaging their own balance by making the newest army extremely powerful. Here is the thing. There is a big secret to game balance. It is impossible to achieve. There has been one balanced game in all of history, and it's not chess. White is at an advantage in that game. No, the only balanced game ever made is, of course, StarCraft 1 Brood War, and even that needed a few patches to get right. Balance generally is one of the hardest things that a game designer needs to grapple with. There's so many moving parts. Now, let me bore you for a hot little second. What is balance in the context of Warhammer? Well, balance, for the purposes of this video, refers to the probability of winning a game given the faction that you have chosen, normalizing all other factors. Basically, giving people equal chances depending on what army they've picked. But that's really hard, especially for a game like Warhammer 40k, where it's expected that new content will constantly be coming out for it. A game like chess doesn't have any new content really, it's a bit boring, but it means that the game is very static. Okay, sure, there's Chess 2, the sequel, Alice Chess, Triangular Chess, Mini Chess, Los Alamos Chess, Zonal Chess, Rhombic Chess, Dragonfly Chess, 2080 Chess, Chad Chess, Masonic Chess, Diplomat Chess, Parallel Worlds Chess, Atomic Chess, Thrones Chess, Chess Essence, Bruski's Hexagonal Chess, Checklist Chess, Hostage Chess, Nightmare Chess, Omega Chess, Wolf Chess, Weagle Chess, No Stress Chess, Fantasy Chess, Joker Chess, Chess Heads Chess, Dark Chess, Martian Chess, Chess, Put on a Big Board, Bomberman Chess, Baroque Chess, Embassy Chess, Bonus Chess, Gothic Chess, Modern Chess, Proteus Chess, Chester's Chess, Three-Player Chess, Tri Chess, Iron Chess, Indian Chess, Replacement Chess, Legion Chess, Rifle Chess, Thunder Chess, Chess, Kamikaze Chess, Jump Chess, Extinction Chess, and of course, 3-check chess. But aside from all those variants, chess is a fixed quantity. Warhammer 40k is not. It's one of those games, like many other war games, that grows. And as a game grows, the mechanics of that game tend to get weirder and more imaginative, more degenerate.
I'm gonna get real weird with it.
Because one of the goals of good game design is to keep things fresh and interesting for players. That's typically why a lot of games have new content come out beyond simply the insatiable desire of parent companies to endlessly make money and feast on our futures. But the developers want to keep their game relevant. They want to have fresh, fun content for players, and also their entire purpose as a designer is to find the funnest version of their game that can exist. Not everything can be hungry hippos and be perfect right out of the gate. So designers have to explore new ways that players can interact with the mechanics of their game and carve out new design spaces to allow for that. You'll see this in a lot of games that are continually updated with new releases and armies. The first couple of releases might have simpler mechanics. There might be special abilities for certain factions, like +1 to all dice rolls for shooting. These simple mechanics are easy wins. They're low-hanging fruit for designers. Their impact can be easily reckoned and mathed out, and they're obvious things to add. +1 to a dice roll is a fairly, that makes sense, thing to add to a game. But as a game grows and more content is added, now the designer can't exactly give the 17th faction that's meant to be good at shooting a +1 to all shooting rolls. At least not if they want an asymmetrical game where everyone plays differently. That mechanic has been done already, so to differentiate the 17th faction, they're gonna have to add a spicy mechanic. Something more imaginative and less obvious. Like, I don't know, you can fire twice in a single round so long as your units are all painted to look like the village people. And this continues on with every new addition to the game. And so, as a game grows, more special rules and more exceptions to the core rules get added until it can become a real mess. Because with plenty of these new rules, they very easily might be stronger than originally envisioned by the designer, or easier to achieve in practice than they thought. Turns out that everybody was already painting their models to look like the village people, so it was an easier game state to achieve than intended. And rules might compound on each other and interact with one another in unexpected ways. Oh no! This unit's ability to double its attacks during the equinox has just made the village people rule so much stronger. But maybe this was partly the intention. Hey, all these rules represent our gay witch army pretty well. This is one of the problems of bloat in Warhammer, and it's why we end up with concepts like codex creep, where every new codex is stronger than the last. And it's because every new codex is intrinsically a harder task to balance than the last one, especially when you consider the amount of stuff that goes into these codices. New units, you got new data sheets, a whole host of new relics, new narrative rules, you got dozens and dozens and dozens of stratagems. It's an endless cavalcade of different rules intersecting with one another. Of course, Warhammer 40k is going to be imbalanced. It would be a Herculean task to balance it. And when you're coming out with new codices every single month, it's gonna be a Sisyphean task as well. You're constantly pushing that boulder up the hill, only for something new to come around the corner. Plus, designers want to do cool, new, powerful things. It's part of the fun of game design.
I'm a man cheetah.
Trying to break your game and test how robust the rule set is. Then, on top of all that, we need to remember that balance is not even really a priority for Games Workshop. Never really has been. Warhammer 40k is constantly contextualized by the company as a fun, fluffy narrative game. Of course, it's not. It's an adversarial game where there's a winner and a loser. Although we're playing Warhammer 40k, we're all losers there. Its systems do not lend themselves to a good narrative experience. It's just not a very good narrative game. And worse, to increase the verisimilitude of the narrative experience of Warhammer 40k, Games Workshop Workshop have opted to add the granularity of a cube of sugar to the game and try to simulate absolutely everything possible, making Warhammer 40k a massive, confusing system of various rules interacting with each other in unintuitive ways. But don't worry, you won't know about most of those exceptional rules and rules that break other rules because they're hidden from you in a book that you'd have to buy separately to see. So you don't need to concern yourself with them until the day that you actually bump into somebody who uses those rules, in which case it is a trip and a half to understand what the hell is going on at the table. Because that's another thing. The codex system intrinsically causes problems for balance. Codices slowly get dripped out into the community over years instead of being released together all at once. So we don't get a complete game where everything can be playtested together. Instead, we get new hot rules every few months. It's madness! Madness! Warhammer 40k is truly the game to play if you want to simulate the feeling of being a researcher in a Lovecraftian story, with each new book another ghastly revelation. Is that good for the game design and balance of Warhammer 40k? No, not really. But it's good sales design. It means that Games Workshop have something to hype up every month, and that results in increased sales. Because by the way, marketing works! If you think you're immune to it, you're the most susceptible. You got at some stage. I hate it. That is the priority for Games Workshop. So taking all this together, it's not a surprise to me at all when new armies come out and that they're pretty broken. The way that Warhammer 40k rules are distributed, the intrinsic difficulty of game design, it means that codex creep is kind of inevitable in a game like this, even with the best will in the world. And that is what I've always chalked imbalanced armies in Warhammer 40k up to. That in my ward. But there's a difference between an imbalanced army and an army that seems intentionally designed to fundamentally break the rules of the game, presumably to increase sales. That is when the integrity of a game is fundamentally broken and trust between the company and players shattered. And that is what the Leagues of Votann seem to represent. And I hope that the army is patched quickly to make the game state better. But nevertheless, we should remember that Games Workshop released the army in this state. This is the intended power level for a release of a new army. And also, lots of people bought the Leagues of Votann army boxes. Many, sure, because they like the models, and many because they like the themes of the army. But a lot of those purchasers bought them because they want to play an extremely powerful army that can overwhelm their opponent with ease. And Games Workshop know that. And they know that there is a market for those who want to buy an advantage over their opponents. These players exist. And to be frank, they're most of us. Because I'm not just talking about competitive players here. I'm talking about casuals and narrative players too. I can tell you that as a casual player, we are often at the mercy of who's available to play with at our local game store or club and what those players play. My problem with the imbalance of Warhammer 40k isn't necessarily for the competitive scene. That scene can actually mitigate the harm a little bit. They can choose to ban new armies when they come out. And the vast majority of players of Warhammer 40k aren't competitive players. It's a niche within a niche of a niche. Most players are casuals, and if they are constantly getting stomped on by Votann players, then they either completely reframe their entire experience of the game, change their attitude towards victory and loss like a prisoner who has found Christ, and begin to accept the new game state. They will always lose, and that's fine. To be honest, if you expect that, you're asking a lot. Or they can stop playing against Votann, which might not be actually possible because it's the only option in their area, or their friend is playing Votann and it kind of feels bad to not playing with your friend because of their army choice. Or they can buy Votann as well in order to have a game that lasts longer than the lifespan of my known oil. Those paint pots are designed designed to be spilled, let's be honest. Or, you know, there's the hidden option. Stop playing Warhammer altogether because you're not having fun anymore. This is all an added pressure that sucks for consumers, and it's where the pay-to-win element of Warhammer comes in and why it's so disastrous for the game. Leagues of Votann just seem very mask off and completely at odds with how good factions should be designed. A variety of factions should make a game fun for everyone, not just for the one player who spent money on the newest release. So, are you curious about whether the Leagues of Votann are actually pay to win? Well, check out my video here. And if you think factions should be fun and not stupid OP, why not check out my Patreon at patreon.com/discourse miniatures to help support the channel. And a big thanks to Sonic Bread and Beauregard Equipment and to all of my patrons. Thank you. And I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye!